Moving on to the next slide. Current issues and politics and financial aid. I'll be referencing a little bit of Grand Valley and a little bit more with the government. What I found really interesting while I was learning more about the history of financial aid and the current issues was kind of related to what I read in the Higher Education Act of 2008. This was, again, one of the many reauthorized versions since the original one in 1965. And when I was reading Fuller, he mentioned that it really reinforced the government and society's disconnect with rising tuition costs. And this really linked to what I felt and what many other students feel. Financial aid and the federal government and outside loans and student debt, it just seems like a big jumble of confusion. And the fact that, if at least what Fuller has stated, and this may again be a different opinion, but it's interesting to see that something that is supposed to explain more about student loans and more about tuition and costs still cause so much of a disconnect. So I think that really mirrors what's going on with this issue of student loans. And really closely linked to student loans is student debt, which is then related to financial aid. When I mentioned previously, my contact in financial aid was talking a little bit about how middle-class families are not eligible for the Parent Plus loan because of the estimated family contribution. So that's a big issue at Grand Valley, and a lot of students choose not to come to the university because they're not receiving enough aid. That links to the fact that there's 15 public universities in the state of Michigan, and Grand Valley is 14th for receiving aid. So although we have done very well with students who are graduating, with having a great fall class, having students who are going on to be very successful, it's not really helping our financial opportunities to give to families, and it's causing issues. And something I mentioned in my article was the fact that Elizabeth Warren is a huge proponent for addressing student debt. And when the information came out from the accountability report saying that there was over $66 billion in profit from the government based on student loans, she stated it was obscene to make profit off the backs of students. And that's an issue, is that the people and also government are profiting off of students who are getting 70, 80, 90, $100,000 in debt, and the interest then builds up over years, and they're only going to profit more and more as more students are taking out loans. One difference that I found from Grand Valley compared to maybe another university is how public universities and private universities are able to spend their money. So public universities have to follow state and federal guidelines. As I mentioned previously, what kind of causes a little bit of trouble at Grand Valley is that we're ranked 14th out of 15th in the state of Michigan for receiving financial assistance from the government. But that also means we have to follow a lot of state and federal guidelines. Now, compared to private universities that are notoriously much more money, they also have the ability to be more flexible. They can award more money to persuade students to join their university. They can just kind of, at least with my contact, she said, they can create different funds for different students and say, hey, we created this $3,000 scholarship, because they can. They don't have to follow different protocol and go through the different databases to have students try and receive these scholarships. So that's a big difference that I've seen between public and private. And on my side of things, this also causes a lot of confusions with families. There'll be people who come in and say, well, I earned a $15,000 scholarship at X private university, and I've only received $5,000 from Grand Valley. And it's difficult to have them look past the scholarship amount to say, what is the net cost that you'll be sending at the university? It's $20,000 a year for the university here. If you earn that $5,000, that'll go towards your overall net costs. But that $12,000 or $15,000 you have at a private, that might not even cover your housing, or something, the tuition for that semester. And so that's a difficulty I have in my university, in my office, and then also what the financial aid office has. One interesting thing that my contact in financial aid mentioned was I asked her if there's anything new or different that's kind of coming up for Grand Valley. And only a couple of weeks ago, they signed the Detroit Promise, which is a partnership through Grand Valley and the Detroit schools, Detroit Public Schools, where the 12th University to partner with them. And for eligible students, they will receive tuition for free. And she stated it was interesting to see what will kind of play from it, because they're not really sure how it will be incorporated into the budget. So they're kind of waiting how it will be figuring out. Again, watching what the budget is and being in scholarship and financial aid office, it's a big thing on their minds. It's a great opportunity, but it's also going to possibly shift some things around. So some recommendations I talk about is free college tuition. Since college is so expensive, why not offer free tuition? This was the cornerstone of Senator Bernie Sanders when he was running for the presidential nominee. He stressed the importance of, bringing attention to student loans and how community colleges and universities should have free tuition so students aren't graduating with so much debt. And this is kind of also what Senator Elizabeth Warren mentioned as well. And it was interesting, as I was kind of getting all this information together, New York public universities are now the first state, or at least the largest state, to offer free tuition to students. And these will be first for students whose parents make less than 110, then it goes, I think, 115, then 125,000 over a 3-year span. And that makes them eligible for public. Again, they have to hit all the other requirements to go there, but I mean, this is a very interesting thing to see how this plays out. Again, it's very brand new, and it will be really interesting to see how this affects the universities in New York, since so many people go to the East Coast in the New York area to go to school, how this will change how people will be going across the other states. Another thing would be the topic of loan forgiveness. In my article, I didn't really mention it too much in this presentation, but there was actually a representative from Michigan. He put forth the Loan Forgiveness Act of 2012, which gave the thought process that if you paid 120 payments in the first 10 years, your loan would be forgiven or canceled, and you wouldn't have to pay it anymore. I think loan forgiveness is also what Senator Warren has talked about, and Senator Sanders, and quite a few other big proponents, mainly Democrats, about student loans and forgiveness. So I thought it would be interesting to see, looking at the act, see if it could be possible, since it did not pass and was abandoned since the senator or the representative was not reelected in 2013 to come back. For many of the people, when they were looking at this loan, they thought it was not a good option for students. Like, they didn't think it would be realistic that students could do 120 payments in the first 10 years. So it'd be interesting to see if there's other ways for loan forgiveness to happen in the future. And these are a couple of my references that I have throughout. I think the biggest thing I thought was interesting about learning about this financial aid was really just the history, how, as I kind of say on my first slide, sorry to kind of go back, I know that's not the best, but financial aid is increasingly driven by political priorities rather than student need or merit. At the beginning, just like everything, financial aid was a good idea. 0% interest loans, or it was all charitable donations, and especially since 1965, it's really taken a turn, and the government's profiting, and tuition costs are going up, and the college degree is looked at as a necessity in this, at least in this world. So it'd be interesting to see what happens when tuition and loans and all these different things are kind of changed up. So again, I learned a lot from this, and it was nice to talk about financial aid.